What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over my Fortnite settings and controller settings for the new Star Wars Galactic battle season. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more. If you would like to support me in Fortnite's item shop, my code is EvolveJake. Let me know down in the comments below what input method do you play on, whether it's controller or keyboard, and what controller you use if you are a controller player. Personally, I use PS5 controllers, and I do have my own custom PS5 aim controller. If you go to aim controller's website, there will be a link down in the description below. You can use my code and, get yourself a decent discount on these controllers. Like most custom controllers, they offer several features. The most notable is going to be paddles on the back. Personally, I only use one paddle, but these allow you to have things mapped to the back of the controller. That way you can hit those actions without taking your thumbs off the analog stick. There is digital triggers, so you don't have to push it in as much to actually activate it. And then the same is true with bumpers and buttons. Everything is digital and as sensitive as possible, making it as quick to react in game and give you that little boost. Other products I use is going to be Control Freaks. This is going to be a little extender on the analog stick. I use one high-rise Galaxy Control Freak on the right stick. And what this does is the analog stick being taller gives you a bit of leverage, and that should make it mathematically easier to make small adjustments when aiming, especially at longer ranges. I have a code with them as well. I am sponsored by Aim Controllers and Control Freak. Both the codes are just EvolveJake. I personally have used Control Freak since like 2011 though, long before I streamed and made content. And then also with Control Freaks, they do sell these in stores like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, GameStop, and you can get them on Amazon as well if you would rather do that way. I know a lot of people like to just being able to go and pick things up. And the final product I use that is going to impact this is going to be a controller scroll wheel. I am not sponsored by them, but it will be linked down in the description below. I use this for scroll wheel reset while playing builds and to swap to slot 1. So I can swap to slot 1 at any time without impacting. I don't have to cycle all the way through. And so now let's get into the settings. Sorry for that intro being a bit longer, but just wanted to cover that. And as I said, I am sponsored by AIM and Control Freak. If you guys do use my codes, I much appreciate it. And obviously #ad. For my display settings, a lot of this is very basic. I just play on pretty much everything on low or off. I do play on DX12 render mode. For whatever reason, I just like this more. And from what I've been told, it kind of runs better on newer hardware. I think in Chapter 4 at one point I was having performance issues. Somebody recommended I tried this and it felt a lot better, and I've just kind of used it ever since. Motion blur you 100% want off regardless of how you feel about graphics. But then everything else, like I said, I just have on low or off. And this is to make the game run as stable and as consistently smooth as possible. With a game like Fortnite, or really any PvP game, getting those higher frames and that performance is going to go a long way in helping you play better. But I think Fortnite is also a game that looks very decent on low settings. If it was a more realistic looking art style game, I feel like those are definitely uglier to look at on low settings. But like the cartoony nature of Fortnite, I think definitely makes it easier to get by, or less negatively impactful to get by on low settings. Audio settings, very self-explanatory, basic, it's just preference. Music volume only affects the music you hear in the lobby. It doesn't affect the in-game music you might hear from vaults or whatever. There aren't any this season. Sound effects 70%. If you want to have this 100, that's fine. This is just what I've had it on for years and what I'm, I feel fine playing with. Sound quality high. 3D headphones I've off again. Not really sure why I have this off, but it's just how things have been for years for me. And the way I look at audio is, do I understand what's going on in game? And do I have a hard time hearing opponents and predicting how they're playing based off that? I think I use sound well to my advantage in game, so it's one of those things where if it's not broken, if it's not broken, I don't want to fix it. So I just don't change any of this. Visualize sound effects, I would highly recommend having on. This is going to be the little footsteps indicator on the map around your crosshair that lets you know where people are. This is really good for seeing cars. And what I think is really impactful this season is that you can see the spaceships from quite far away using the setting, and I feel like I pretty much always see the spaceships, whether it's the TIE Fighter or the X-Wing. I see it on visuals long before I actually hear it, and it makes it easier for me to find them and hopefully get caught off guard by them less. License audio on mute, this is just a content creator thing. Your videos are less likely to get copyrighted. Voice chat doesn't matter, I would use Discord. Toggle sprint I have off, auto open doors on, mantle activation, hold jump, hurdle activation, press jump, hold to swap pickup off, toggle targeting off, mark danger and targeting off, auto pickup weapons off, swap fire inputs for pump and dump. This was only on keyboard, I think, so it doesn't really matter. Bird item slots, I have shotgun 1, AR 2. This is just impactful because it tries to automatically sort your inventory, and I don't want to have everything very organized with this because I don't want the game doing that much in like the heat of the moment, especially if I'm looting a kill in like mid to late game. If it just starts swapping my inventory around and messing it up, that would irritate me. So I mainly just have shotgun and AR in slot 1 and 2 because this is how I normally have my inventory set up. And when it comes to landing off spawn, if I just grab 2 weapons, I want the shotgun in slot 1, and then hopefully the second one is an AR that ends up in slot 2, or it just ends up in slot 2 because it wasn't a shotgun. Once you have more time to play the game, I feel like you have more time to like organize your inventory on its own. So I don't get too specific with that, but if you want to, that's fine. Reset building choice on, turbo building on. If you're trying to play builds and you don't have this on, good luck. I don't use simple edit. Context steps off. I don't know if any of this stuff matters. Tap to search interact is huge. You want that on. It just makes it easier to search chests and ammo boxes, which don't exist this season, but in the future when there is ammo boxes, that would be nice. Record replays I've on. I've had people ask me how I have replays and I can view the replay of the game when I'm streaming. That's how it's just a setting in game. Sleep mode I have on off or never because I don't ever want the game to do that. If I'm not playing, I will just close it. For this game UI, I don't think anything is too significant except for net debug stats. I've had a lot of people ask me how I have the ping displaying in game. This is how. This will show you your ping, which your ping is going to be your delay, how long it takes your internet and the server to like exchange information. The higher the ping, the worse. I've had a lot of people ask me how I have such low ping. I have good internet and I live in the same state as the servers. That is it. I didn't move here for that. I spawned in here and this happens to be where the Fortnite servers are. Gyro I do not use. Mouse and keyboard I do not use. The only thing that I think would really matter, or okay, no, nothing would matter here. For here on the keyboard settings, the fact that I use a controller scroll wheel, having slot 1 for scroll wheel up, maybe I scrolled past it. Okay, yeah, weapon slot 1 I have as scroll wheel up. And then building reset I have as scroll wheel down. And that makes sure I can instant reset and then instant swap to slot 1. So for my controller settings, I have controller auto run off, builder pro build immediately on if you play builds. You definitely want this on. If you don't play build mode, it doesn't really matter. Edit hold time, you want this as low as you can get it without accidentally editing. But if you have edit on its own bind, then this doesn't apply. The default binds have edit and switch mode sharing a bind, so you have to like hold to actually edit. I have edit on its own bind, so it doesn't matter. I don't use simple edit. Slide hold time I have on 0.08. This is what I've had it on for a while. For this setting, I think you just want it as low as you can get it without accidentally activating a slide. Because the longer this is, the more inconvenient it is going to be for you to slide. And you want your movement to be as fast, as fluid as possible, especially in those chaotic close range fights. So you want to be able to easily slide, but you don't want to be accidentally sliding. So this is something that you kind of need to play around with and see what works for you. Don't use these settings. Vibration I have on off. Quick weapon I don't use. And then as far as sensitivity goes, I have 2 build, 2.1 edit, 1.08 first person, but that doesn't matter. This applies to ballistic mode. This doesn't apply to like the red dot ARs in game. Use advanced options on. Look horizontal and vertical I have on 40%. This is what I've had it on quite some time. And then I don't have any boosts. I do play linear. And so for the most part, I feel like people that play on linear don't use boosts because linear is just much faster as is. And having these boosts, I feel like would make things just faster than I would want and a bit less inconsistent, or a bit more inconsistent, sorry. I think the main reasoning for wanting to use something like this would be if you played on a lower base sensitivity, but still wanted to be able to react fast in certain situations, you could turn on a boost and then put that ramp time up. It's like the opposite of dampening. But I'd rather just play on a higher sense and get used to it. Look, ADS, horizontal and vertical I have on 11, and then my scoped speed multiplier is 1.09. This is the one that affects the red dot ARs. So like the current IQA 11 DMR and then the A280 rifle are affected by this setting. Look dampening time I have on 0.05. I didn't use this for years, but I started using it during the Marvel season because the Striker Burst AR had bugged aim assist during that season. And then just over the past few years, it's felt like a lot of weapons have weird aim assist bugs or like times where aim assist cuts out. And this look dampening time, I feel like helps me with that a little bit. It just is, like I said, it's the opposite of boosts. The way boosts work is like if you've been pushing your stick for a while, then the boost kicks in and you get a higher sensitivity. This one gives you a bit of a lower sensitivity if you're barely touching your stick for that little time. So I just have a little bit of dampening preference. So everything in this video is preference. Look input curve I have on linear. Linear and expo are, you know, two different settings that affect how your sensitivity increases. Linear just feels typically faster and like more loose, whereas expo is a little bit slower and more controlled. And the main differences between them, or the main like kind of advantages and disadvantages, is linear is kind of seen to be better in close range for making like large adjustments with your pump, or, you know, needing to like turn on people. If you need to make adjustments quickly, linear is kind of ideal for that. Whereas expo is more like controlled and seen to be better for like long range aim. But both of the advantages and disadvantages of these settings are not concrete. It's not like if you play on linear, you'll just never have good long range aim, or if you play on expo, you'll never have good close range. I've played on linear probably about 5 years now, 4 years. And I feel like I do fine at long range, especially with like the red dot ARs that Fortnite added. I feel like that makes it a little bit easier. When we have only third person ARs in the meta, like during like some of the OG seasons, I feel like those are the times where I notice the downside of linear most. But as I said, it's just preference, playstyle, what feels comfortable to you and what feels good. And despite these settings having advantages and disadvantages, it doesn't mean that's just permanent and you can't overcome it. It's just kind of what the setting lends itself more to. Aim assist strength both on 100, dead zones at 12. This is how much you move the stick before you start to register movement in game. And the main reason why this is a setting, I believe, is because with controllers being mass produced and kind of the way wear and tear happens, you can get controllers that have stick drift, and dead zones allow you to fine tune that to hopefully combat that stick drift. But if you have it so high, it also makes your game feel terrible. So my recommendation for these settings is to have it on as low as you can get it, that feels comfortable and that you don't get stick drift. Some people, I think the default is like 0.20 or 20%, and that makes it to where you have to be moving your stick more to make adjustments, and that's going to make it harder for you to react and just gives you less control. I think the lower dead zones gives you a bit more control, but sometimes when people play on like the lowest dead zone possible, it feels like too loose. And so you kind of need to play with it and find what works for you. But as I said, the lower you can get it, I think the better, while still feeling controlled and not having stick drift. And these other settings don't matter. For my keybinds, I play on pretty basic keybinds because I play claw, which is going to be where your index finger is on the triangle, circle, X, square buttons at all times. I've been playing claw since like 2008, 2009. And that's why I only use one paddle on my controller. Nowadays, there's not really as much of an incentive to play claw, and you're probably just better off getting paddles and getting used to that. But when I started playing claw, paddled controllers were not a thing. The only bind I have that's really weird is going to be sprint on left on the D-pad, but that is what I use my paddle for. So I don't actually hit that. I just hit the button on the back of the controller. Everything else I actually hit the button. So jump is X, default fire buttons, reload is square, you know, swap weapons is default. But as I talked about before, I use the scroll wheel to get to slot 1 whenever I need it. Pickaxe on left stick, crouch on right stick. I've been asked a lot what my crouch bind is because of the way I crouch spam in fights, and it's just right stick. Gotten asked a lot like how I do that without messing up my aim. I don't know. It's never really been a problem for me. Weapon canting I have on triangle. This is going to be when you can use the red dot weapons without a sight. This is a setting that I really don't take advantage of at all. But some people have problems with this where they're accidentally activating it, because I think the default bind for this is left stick when aimed in, or whatever the default sprint button is. And so if you constantly keep doing it accidentally, you can just unbind that or bind it to something that you're not going to hit accidentally. As far as building and editing, my switch mode is circle, my edit is triangle, my confirm is L2, and my select is R2, and then I use scroll wheel down for reset. And that is basically it for my keybinds and this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, comment down below what input method you play on, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.